so much for joining the EVI Women in STEM seminar series. Our guest speaker today is Noodleman, a successful venture capital investor and partner at Bee Patners. Today, she will be sharing some career and personal advice for us all. Hi, Kira. Thank you so much for joining us today. Honestly, thank you. We appreciate it.
So happy to be here, Hattie. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, like a quick, brief intro?
Yeah, so I grew up in Silicon Valley and was surrounded by startup innovation, always fascinated by it. I went to school in the South. I went to Vanderbilt. I, at the time, loved live, I still do, love live music, and it's a great school too. And so I went down to Nashville for 4 years, came back to the Bay Area, over 6 years, worked for different startups doing product management. And I probably did 12 different go-to-market MVP products over that time period. 3 years I was in San Francisco, and then the last 3 years I was first in Brazil and then spent 2 years in Argentina. Came back to the Bay Area, which is where I wanted to focus on innovation, entrepreneurship. So came back home, got into Berkeley for business school, and attended Haas, had an amazing experience, and then met my current team at Bee Patners through my summer internship. And I've known Bee and worked with them for 6 years, and I've been full-time with them for 5.
Okay, so for people that don't know what like Bee Patners is and VC work, what to you does a venture capital investor do, and what does the work entail?
Yeah, so venture capital is investing money in startup innovation. And the work entails, it's different for everybody, but typically having an investment thesis or perspective on maybe a market or a technology or a business model, and then meeting founders. And for me, I invested the pre-seed, which is often a founder or two, maybe coming out of John Coates' lab. We've invested in 2 of those PhDs, and they just have an idea. And so, with investing, you're giving money. In the case of Bee Patners, we give money, but we also collaborate. We're named Bee Patners because we partner. And so we're very hands-on and are trying to accelerate the successes of our teams. And for us at the pre-seed, it's helping our teams get to market.
And how would you say your experience as a product manager helped you in this line of work, and how did you decide to pivot to VC work?
Yeah, so as a product manager, I was always between a lot of different interdisciplinary teams, whether it was engineers, QA, developer, designer, business analyst, and so on, project manager. And so I was always having to juggle a lot of balls and also move at a fast pace with very tangible deliverables to produce in short timelines. And so I think I joke that VC has 50 plus work streams. It's that kind of job, and you're constantly working with people at every level. And so it's really dynamic and exciting, comes with challenge. But I think that's the direct kind of one way that product has supported, my success in VC.
And what would you say? I know you mentioned like machinery, but what would you say is the type of companies attract you to invest in, and why?
Yeah, so Bee Patners, our worldview is that machines will win. And what I mean by that is they're outpacing human capacity and abilities. And so every solution that we're investing in is a combination of human and machine interaction. And depending on the industry, that's a huge range of what that looks like. So I'll keep this brief and just say that on a tangible level, we invest in, we call it deep technology, but it's technology that's on the cutting edge. Examples that my focuses are robotics, synthetic biology, specifically focused on the future of food, things like clean meat. And I'd say other than the thesis, so much of what we're doing at the pre-seed is also investing in the person.
Perfect. And what would you say Bee Patners' operation model is? Like, let's say I have a robotics company. I just got accepted by Bee Patners. What would be the next step after that?
Yeah, so we always do an onboarding. As you mentioned, I'm a partner. I work with 3 other partners. So we'll do an kind of an immersion into, we're trying to understand where we can immediately support the startup, and then what their critical path is ahead to their next big milestone, which is often the next fundraise. And so we'll get straight on their go-to-market, any money that they need to close out, hiring plans, maybe PR, defining their MVP and getting clear there. So we'll kind of like lay out a plan basically, and then we'll set up a recurring cadence with them. We meet with them weekly. When they need more time, we make it. It really depends, but we're essentially very hands-on, where, the perfect situation is that they call us on their biggest win and something very exciting. And they also call us when they've had a really tough blow come their way and they need support.
Yeah, of course. And what would you say, of course, like with a founder and also for a investor, if an investment strategy didn't work and the investment went wrong, what would be the repercussions of an investor and also a founder of the company?
Yeah, so that happens all the time. And this is a really objective truth of this industry. I mean, 90% of the startups fail. And so this is something that anyone who's interested in this field should go in eyes open with
Mhm.
to, understand. And I think on the founder side, it's really hard because it's not, once you've raised money, it's not just your blood, sweat, and tears. You've got fiduciary responsibilities to someone like myself, and we have fiduciary responsibilities to the people who give us money. And so there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. And I think on the founder side, I think, the worst case scenario is a company ends up needing to shut down. I think most of the time there's a middle ground where if the problem is surfaced early enough, the investor can, and like, again, Bee Partners is a certain kind of investor, but we'll jump in. I mean, it's not teleported. I've dropped into a portfolio company for, a couple months at a time to help them when they were trying to tell the story about, their market to Series A investors. And because they didn't have that story down, they weren't necessarily going to be able to raise money. And so that's an example. And on the investor side, for me as a partner and a new partner at that, it never feels good, nor does it look good if one of the companies you brought in and or have just been actively supporting, it doesn't succeed. And I think the way that we look at decisions, or it is the way we look, is you got to evaluate a decision by what you knew at the time of making it. And that's a lot about the thesis, as well as kind of what signals we were getting from that founder. And, it depends. Was there something out of our control that happened, like regulation, a climate disaster, someone passed away, these things happen? Or was it something that we could have spotted sooner? And so I think that's ultimately over time. And it's not any one company failing that's going to say, make a VC look like a bad investor. It's like, if you kind of never find the successes in that pile of, some are successes, some are failures, hopefully you start to get a track record that also shows success.
So now more to like the personal questions, but to being a VC, especially like in the current industry you're in, currently there's only 15% of women in your line of work. But despite that, there's extremely talented people, including yourself, that are looking to just better your current industry. Why did you choose this line of work, knowing that it was so difficult?
Yeah, well, I think it's such an incredible opportunity to be part of shaping and defining the future. So there's a part of me that loves science fiction and is just genuinely very interested in like conceptually what we're looking at. I get to talk to the smartest people that I've ever met every single day, and they're different people. And I think I said this, but I love, the investing and the partnership I really love. And also, I mean, I think the bigger picture that I'm getting at is like, I live and breathe this stuff. I mean, I thrive off of startup energy. I mean, that was my entry point into VC even early on, which was I was working for Haas on the launch accelerator that's run by Haas MBAs. And I was doing so much more work than I had to be because I loved it. And I loved the time pressure. I loved the late nights and the challenges that needed to be solved and, often immediately. And I loved, what the events felt like. So it was just so many things that I was living and breathing it. And there was actually, her name's Rhonda Schrader, the woman who runs the Entrepreneurship Center at Haas, said, hey, who was a faculty on Haas, or Launch, said, hey, have you thought about VC? And it's crazy to think that that was the one conversation that really opened my eyes.
That's so cool. And what would you say, because I know you went back to school and you got your MBA at Haas, which congratulations, that's very difficult to get.
Yeah.
What would you say motivated you to continue to go back into academia? Because I know as a college student, especially a lot of college students like myself, that we went through high school and also our first year during COVID, it can be extremely draining and you feel like when is this gonna end? How did you do that? Like how did you not get burnt out?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I said I can relate to those feelings. And when I came back to Haas, it was such a privilege to have 2 years to study. It was like a sacred space. And so my motivation was, I was successful as a product manager. I did love what I did, but there was a way I felt like I wanted to diversify what my skill set was. I was always interested in entrepreneurship and innovation. And so I just wanted to I'll get to this maybe later, but I wanted the optionality. I wanted to know what else was out there specifically around entrepreneurship, which also, given that I was living in Argentina, is what made me very clear I wanted to come back to the Bay Area.
Mhm. This is our last question. What would be the one piece of guidance and or insight you would like to tell your younger self and also future young women that are trying to go into the same industry that you are currently thriving in?
Yeah. So I'll start with, I probably have a handful of pieces of advice, but I'll start with the most important one, which is I mentioned the word optionality. And I want to put this in context of my own journey, which was, and the concept here is, how can I make a choice that's going to increase the number of choices and options I have in the future? And so so after my summer internship with Bee Patners, they had started the summer saying there's no job. And then, which is very normal in the industry, it didn't even make me, blink. And then they made a job for me at the end of the summer. And because of the context of it all, of course I was thinking about VC, but I was also thinking, well, maybe I want to, meet somebody in engineering at Berkeley and start a company, or maybe I want to join another really exciting startup. And so what I went through, so I basically wasn't clear. And I talked to one of my most important mentors. His name's Rob Chandra. He used to be a professor of entrepreneurship at Haas. It's very passed away too soon. But I talked to him and other mentors. But his was the most important, because the day before I made my decision, which I ended up joining Bee Patners, and I was laying out my dilemma, and he said, Kira, I think you should make the option, or to choose the path here that has the most optionality, meaning if you haven't even gone down the path of the kind of startup you might want to start yourself, so you're just a ways out from that. If you wanted to evaluate startups, and sure, you're in business school, so you've got some time, but what's the most you're going to see? 15 a week. Okay, cool. Well, what if you were in venture capital? And today at Bee Patners, I see about 3,000 deals a year. So if you're really trying to, what's the best choice considering all of that? Well, what if you just went into venture? And then if you really want to go the startup path, you're going to be in a really good place to pick the right startup. And then I even talked to Bee Patners about the dilemma, and they added on something even sweeter, which was, and if you want to start a company, we'll fund you. And so there was what turned into a situation of no downside, but it really started with me just thinking from a perspective of what would optionality look like for me.
Perfect. And the actual definition of optionality in terms of VCs is just like, what would you say the best definition? Because I feel like you said you can apply it to your normal everyday decision.
Yeah. Well, this is, in VC and company building, you think of optionality, but the concept is, what's a decision today that will give me more options in the future, right? Like what's the best thing I can choose today that creates that reality for me? Because some things you pick and then you have a narrower set of options, or you've got, 3 and then it becomes 2 and 1. Where optionality says, well, what if it could be, what's the most number of options? And maybe that answer's 10. Let me pick that over having 5 options.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That was an amazing conversation. It's truly admirable, especially as a young woman that's also going into trying the same industry, to see a woman so accomplished in your career and have such great passion for your line of work. I, alongside EVI, honestly wish you the best and the best energy in terms of your investments and how your partners are. And we look forward to seeing what comes next. And we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.
Oh, thank you, Hati. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, as well as click the bell to be notified for our next interview. Our socials are linked here as well as on our website. If you're interested in climate change, renewable energy, biosciences, and all that comes with that, and also looking to see what career path you would like to take if you're interested in that, we highly recommend checking our socials and website out.